Hey there, gang. Lauren here, Gratitude Addict. I am grateful today, as usual, as always. Well, I shouldn't say as always. I actually always am grateful, but sometimes gratitude itself, and there's a difference between those two words, which I guess could be another episode now that I'm thinking about it, the difference between gratitude and grateful. My attitude is always grateful. I should say my mindset is always grateful. But sometimes gratitude is difficult to come by, and that is typical of everyone, particularly those living with chronic pain and illness or other life struggles such as trauma, anxiety, depression, and all of that. So I will do an episode soon on that now that I am thinking about it. But today I wanted to come to you with an episode about my favorite books. Now, if you watch my Thursday night show, Gratefully Living the Chronic Life, which has been on, actually last night was our episode number 90, which I forgot to announce. We've been on for over 2 years on Thursday nights, and I've got an entire amazing back catalog of incredible guests and topics over the past 90 episodes. So if you watch that show, you know that each week I have on an expert guest, and I would say more often than not, the expert guest has a book. Now, what normally happens, and this is kind of my joke with the broadcast, is that I will find a book that sounds interesting that I feel could possibly help me along my journey to live gratefully living my chronic life. And possibly, once I learn of things that help me, I like to pass them on to you, my followers and my watchers. So what will happen is I'll find a book, and I will then, my big joke is I stalk them. I stalk the author, and I find them somehow, LinkedIn, or if there's an email address on the book jacket or something like that. I will stalk them, and more often than not, the guest will very graciously accept to come on the show, which is just very humbling, and I'm so grateful for that. So this means that over 90 episodes, and I haven't counted, I don't know, but there have been a lot of books that we have recommended over the past 2.5 years. So it's really difficult, but I wanted to do an episode, or episodes, as I'm going to tell you right now, on my favorite books, the ones that, if I'm on a desert island and I can bring books, these are the ones I'm going to bring that have brought me such meaning and purpose and information that has helped me to gratefully live my chronic life. But it's a bit difficult to compare apples to apples in the categories that I'd like to feature, because I have favorite books on living with chronic pain and illness. I have favorite books on gratitude, which I can't even put them together. And the reason being that nobody yet that I've ever seen, and I will hopefully be the first someday, has created a book on gratitude and chronic pain. This is where my area of specialty lies, and this is where my group Attitude of Gratitude with chronic pain comes in. And it's scientifically proven that gratitude can help those living with chronic pain and illness, along with other life struggles such as trauma and some of the ones I mentioned earlier. So books on gratitude, books on chronic illness, and then I think a third category, and I think it would just be the three, are books on personal growth, general personal growth, that I would put in a whole separate category. Perhaps this is cheating and getting me off the hook to creating my top 10 favorite books in general, but I think it's only fair, and I have so many, so even just breaking it down into these three categories was difficult, but I've done it. And the one I'm going to bring to you today is my favorite books on living with chronic pain and illness. Now, let me tell you, there's a lot of books on chronic pain and illness. The ones I'm focusing on are the ones that are helpful to me. It's not focusing on the problem, because I know what the problem is. I live with the problem. I've lived with chronic pain and illness for 21 years. So I don't need a book to kind of tell me how to take care of myself and what supplements to take, what diet to eat, because I've done my own research over the years and I have found what works for me. So I don't need a book to tell me those things, and I generally do not purchase those books. I get the books on how to live peacefully with serenity joy, purpose, and intention with chronic pain and illness. Now, there aren't a lot, but there are a handful, and I believe I've featured just about all of the authors of these on my Thursday night show, Gratefully Living the Chronic Life. So let's get to it. Let's start with my top 10 favorite books on living with chronic pain and illness. Okay, so let me first say that these books are in no particular order because it was tough enough to choose my 10 favorites. I should say, it was tough, but it wasn't. I mean, there's a handful that are just, my go-tos no matter what. Ranking them, however, would be just not in the realm of possibility for me. So these are in no particular order, but the first one I want to talk about, unfortunately, is no longer in print. However, you can find used copies on Amazon. I'm not even kidding, this little paperback, I've seen it go for several $100s. I checked yesterday, actually, and when I was choosing my favorites, and I wanted to make sure that what I recommend, you can either get at a library or buy used. And they do have used copies on Amazon now, and they're ironically pretty inexpensive at like $40-something. I bought mine many years ago. So this book is called Living with It Daily, Meditations for People with Chronic Pain by Patricia Nielsen. Now, as you can see, this book is being held together by a rubber band because that's how much I use this book. As a matter of fact, I use it every single day. It is a book of pretty much what it says, daily readings, specifically for those living with chronic pain and illness. It was published, look at this, I've got like the covers off, but it is so precious to me, I want to keep it together. So this was published in 1994 by Patricia Nielsen, and I first learned about this book when I was at the chronic pain program at Silver Hill Hospital back 9 years ago, because they read to us, the nurses and people helping with the program, they read to us the daily reading from this every single day. So when I got home after my 30-day stay, I knew I wanted to find a copy. So I did 9 years ago find a copy. I believe I paid like $80-something back then. So if you can grab it now for 40-something, it's a deal. This book is a gem, and I sure wish they would bring it back and allow for more prints. But the daily readings in this book, they feature different topics that always pertain, obviously, to living with chronic pain and illness. Every single day when they read to us from this, it was like they were talking directly to me. This is on living, truly living a joyful life with chronic pain and illness. Like I said in the intro post, or the intro video rather, I don't need to learn what the problem is. I know what the problem is. I need to know how to live peacefully with it. So I'm going to give you an example. See what today's reading is. Today is the June 17th. It's on feelings, and the quote at the top is, "Emotional is perhaps the last word we can apply to some of the most important events," by C.S. Lewis. And then the reading is, "From A to Z, from annoyed to zealous, we can list a feeling for almost every letter in the alphabet. We can go back to such a list and decide which ones we call good and which ones we call bad. We can look at which words describe joy, which describe sorrow, and which describe shame. Do we feel good when, in spite of our pain, we have times of security and content? Do we feel bad when we are trapped and deprived? Are we ashamed when negative emotions turn into underlying attitudes, such as believing that a disability has made us inferior to others? Feelings will come, and we must remember that it is how we act on our feelings that matters. We work toward acknowledging them and choosing to respond in a healthy way, not in a way that will hurt others or ourselves. Repressing negative emotions only causes us more stress and tension. Admitting our feelings, first to ourselves and then to another person, will go a long way toward lessening the negative emotions hold on us." And then at the bottom, that's the end of the reading, and then at the bottom of each reading for the day, there's an affirmation. Today, it says, "For today, if I am troubled, I can admit it, talk to someone, or write about it. I don't have to hold my feelings in." Right? I mean, they're all like this. They are all like this. Every day is spectacular. As a matter of fact, in my community Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, we have a group devoted specifically to this book study. Of the daily readings, we discuss the daily readings for each day. So I highly recommend, if you can get your hands on this book, grab it if you're looking for inspiration and motivation to living with chronic pain and illness. While I said I can't rank them, this one is definitely at the top. I could not live without the readings of this book. They're really just wonderful. If you'd like to join, if you're a member of my community, Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, you can automatically come into any of our sister groups, including, we call it the AOG Chatting Place, which is devoted just to this book and the readings. So Living with It Daily, Meditations for People with Chronic Pain by Patricia and Nielsen is just wonderful. And I will put the link to the Amazon listing so you can get yourself a used copy in the show notes. Hey there, gang. I have my next book selection, and as I was going through all of these books that I'm sharing with you today, I realized that each one of them has a really important piece of it that contributes to the message that I try to share each day in my group and through my broadcast, through the vlog here. And this next selection I've had for about, really since it came out, which came out in 2017, so it's 2022 now, so 5 years. And this, as I was going through it, I haven't read it in a while, but I've recommended it to many people. It is in our recommended book. There's a guide in AOG with recommended books, which I have some of these in there, but not everything. But this one is really a very important part of my message, and it is called Dancing with Elephants by Jarom Sawatsky. Dancing with Elephants, Mindfulness Training for Those Living with Dementia, Chronic Illness, or an Aging Brain. So Jarom is a PhD in, let's see. He is a PhD in Peace and Conflict Transformation Studies. He's Canadian, internationally known for his work as a writer, teacher, and peace builder, but he also lives with a fatal disease called Huntington's disease, which eventually causes you to lose your memory. And that's something that I can certainly relate to at times, depending on where my neurological issues are, and it's scary. But whether or not you live with Huntington's disease, this book, wind's going, watch, your thing's gonna blow over and you'll hear a nice word come out of my mouth again, like the couple videos back, I had to bleep myself. This book is very centered on using mindfulness as an important tool to helping us live with chronic illness. Now, you don't have to be living with a fatal illness to be able to enjoy what is in this book. And as you can see, this is not even just from today, what I wanted to share with you. This is over the years of me finding these wonderful nuggets. He does something that I do as well, and I've never heard anybody else do. In fact, I was sharing this before I read this book, and that I never talk, language to me is very important in how I heal, and how, my narrative really is front and center in my healing. So I'm never one to call myself a warrior of anything, because I feel that implies that I'm fighting for something that I can actually win. Is it semantics? I don't know. But it really I feel it puts sort of the ownership on me to beat this thing. Now, with my conditions, right now there's no cure. So I use mindfulness and a lot of what Jarom talks about in this book as a tool for living peacefully with my conditions. And I've talked about this many times. In the acceptance video I posted last week, I talked about writing a letter to and from your pain and learning to live peacefully with it. And Jarom talks about this a lot. He has a whole chapter devoted to it, in refusing to battle my disease. And he starts it with saying, battling disease seems like a bad idea to me. The idea that waging a battle against my body will someday lead to health strikes no, let me read that again. The idea that waging a battle against my body will someday lead to health strikes me as crazy. Why would we wish war on someone who already has a disease? such a good point. We need to embrace who we are. And if your condition, whether it's physical, emotional, mental, you know, it's part of you. And so we can do things to help us along the way, but waging battle on it does seem like a bad idea to me too. He talks about using mindfulness, and he talks about, I don't want to spend my limited energy fighting or battling anything. I want to enjoy the path. He talks about gratitude quite a bit. There's a quote in here that as soon as I read the book, you know, did I say 5 years ago? Yeah, it is 5 years ago. When I first read the book 5 years ago, there was, you know, I get like, I read something, the quote is so outstanding that I immediately make it into a graphic. Let me see if I can find it. Talks about you know, using mindfulness and gratitude and learning to not resist and learning to be proactive like you're doing here, like you do with practicing gratitude and all of that. Talks about, you know, living while you can and not knowing what tomorrow brings us. He talks about, we all die, relax. The question is not how, the question is, are you living? I mean, this stuff is just gold, absolute gold. Let me find this quote though. I'll put if I can figure out how to do it, I will put the meme that I made. I share it in the group quite a bit. He's got some poetry in here. He's got, actually, my friend, our group friend, Toni Bernhard, who's another author who you may be hearing me talk about one of her books in this episode or more. She's become a friend of mine and a frequent guest on my broadcast, and she's actually interviewed for this book, as is mindfulness, the father of mindfulness in the United States, Jon Kabat-Zinn. All right, I've got to find this. Here it is, found it. Once we start being nourished by the present, our craving for the life we cannot have diminishes. Now here's a man who's dying, who's sharing with us, and this is not his only book, but this is, I believe, the best one, the one that's my favorite, Dancing with Elephants. I believe it's part of a series of other books. This book has really made a profound difference in the message that I send out, and it goes very closely with Toni Bernhard's teachings, Buddhist-based philosophy in living peacefully with our condition and not resisting it. So highly recommend this book. It is available on Amazon still. Dancing with Elephants by Jerem Zawatsky. Okay, gang, so the next book I have is a doozy. It's a doozy, but it's a very important one, and one that I discovered back 9 years ago, actually, when I was a patient, a 30-day patient at Silver Hill Hospital for the pain program. It is Full Catastrophe Living, Using the Wisdom of Your Body and Mind to Face Stress, Pain, and Illness by the father of mindfulness meditation, at least he brought it here to the United States, Jon Kabat-Zinn. You may recognize his name. He's very famous. He's a professor, studied Buddhism, and has brought the mindfulness-based stress reduction program. He founded it at the University of Massachusetts, and it's this very famous 8-week program that has been applied to various things, including chronic illness, which I'm going to talk about in another one of my book selections. One of the other books that I have already reviewed, Dancing with Elephants, has Jon Kabat-Zinn interviewed in the book. So this book, while a doozy, it's certainly not something you need to read from start to finish, because it is a whopping 650-ish pages. But it is an incredible way for us to come to a place of living peacefully with our chronic struggles, illness, pain, depression, anxiety, and you'll see this as a common theme throughout all of my book recommendations, is not fighting it, but living peacefully with it. So let me read a little bit on the back jacket here. It says, stress, it can sap our energy, undermine our health, even shorten our lives. It makes us more vulnerable to anxiety and depression, disconnection, and disease. Based on Jon Kabat-Zinn's renowned mindfulness-based stress reduction program, this classic groundbreaking work, which gave rise to a whole new field in medicine and psychology, shows you how to use medically proven mind-body approaches derived from meditation and yoga to counteract stress, establish greater balance of body and mind, and stimulate well-being and healing. It's a wonderful book, and I have not sat down and read it start to finish, but in all these years I go to it quite frequently. In fact, it's usually one of the books that is, in my prime real estate right up behind my head, because it's that important of a book to me and to the message that I teach. All of these books that I'm giving you, I kind of like chew up pieces of it. I take pieces here and there, and I spit out what my combined message is. But each one of these that I am sharing is an important part of the message that I have come up with, and that I share in Attitude of Gratitude with Chronic Pain, and on my weekly live broadcast and here in this blog. So let me just read you. He's very famous for body scan meditations and using that not as an antidote for pain, but helping us to live with our pain. And I've shared many of these as our daily breath breaks in the group. He's talking about using body scan meditations as a way to distance yourself from thinking that you are your pain. So that's like the premise behind this next paragraph. It says, if you are not your body, then you cannot possibly be your body's pain. As you learn to take up residency and dwell in the domain of being, your relationship to pain and to intense uncomfortable sensation in your body can undergo profound transformation and healing changes. Such experiences, even fleeting tastes and intimations, can guide you in developing your own ways of coming to terms with the pain you experience, to make room for it, to befriend it, to live with it, as so many of our patients have learned to do. Picking one paragraph from the book that kind of sums it up, that's a really great one. This is a national bestseller, as is his 8-week mindfulness stress-based reduction clinic, not only at UMass, but it's now all over the world. You can probably Google, and you can probably find a local place for you to take the 8-week course online. I know you can take courses. I am certified in it. It's been a real game changer for me in living with my illness. So, Full Catastrophe Living by Jon Kabat-Zinn. Highly recommended. Again, I'll put the link in the show notes. Okay, my next book selection is one that, like most of my books actually that I'm recommending, it has been out for a while. And it's actually a bit of a workbook, but it's an important workbook because it probably has the closest underlying message of what I share with my work than any other book, with the exception of one. It's very close, and there's a reason for that. It is because it's a psychotherapy. It's based on a psychotherapy that I was taught at the pain program 9 years ago through Dr. Bruce Singer, who may or may not be in the book selection coming up. But that's not this book. This book is called Living Beyond Your Pain, Using Acceptance and Commitment Therapy to Ease Chronic Pain. Now, there's a lot of different therapies out there. There's CBT, you've probably heard of, DBT. What we were taught, at Silver Hill was a combination of those things, but mainly using acceptance and commitment therapy. And so for that reason, I am constantly sharing with my audience and in the group that we cannot move forward without accepting things. We don't have to like them, but we do have to accept them. As a matter of fact, I did a vlog on it just last week, a video on acceptance, and how we need to be able to embrace what is, whether we like it or not, if we want to find joy and purpose. And that's my message, is trying to help you all find joy and purpose in a life of pain and struggle. And we all go through pain and struggle, those of us that live with chronic pain and illness have a physical aspect to it, but that physical more often than not leads to emotional pain. And that is what I don't feel is discussed enough is, you know, what you get diagnosed with something and, you know, it could be a lifelong illness. And doctors generally don't tell you that you need to deal with the emotional aspect of all of a sudden, you know, this big plot twist. But that's not what this episode is about. You can watch my acceptance video from last week. So this book, Living Beyond Your Pain, Using Acceptance and Commitment Therapy to Ease Chronic Pain, is by Dr. Joanne Dahl and Tobias Lundgren, MS. And it is a workbook, and it's older. I bought this used on Amazon. You can still get it used on Amazon. You can still get it new, of course, but you can get a used copy for like $10. I highly recommend it. It says help for pain associated with back and neck problems, frozen shoulder, repetitive strain, fibromyalgia, migraines, and other chronic conditions. And the back of the book reads, here's an approach to living with chronic pain unlike any you've seen before. One that breaks through pain to help you live the rich and full life you deserve. Based on acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, one of the most promising and fastest growing psychotherapies in use today, this book breaks with conventional notions of pain management, those traditional feel-good approaches, including the use of pain-killing medication. But the ACT approach to living with pain is different. It helps you recognize pain as an event in your life that doesn't need to interfere with the way you live. In fact, attempts to avoid pain can often cause more harm than good, both to your body and to your peace of mind. But by accepting and learning to live with pain, you can limit the control it exerts over your life. Exactly. It's a wonderful book. The copy I got, it was a used copy, like I said. It had some writing in it, but that's okay. I have my own writing in here. It talks about the need to control our pain, which is something that I used to do years ago, and I share this all the time. But the more I tried to control my pain, the more out of control I became. And with every attempt to control my pain that was unsuccessful, I took it very personally, and it led me down a darker road into more depression. So inevitably, the more I tried to control my pain, it made my pain worse in many, many ways. So chapter 2 is controlling your pain is not the answer. And it says, the ACT argument, acceptance commitment therapy argument, is that it's not your pain that causes your problems, but the way you suffer as a result of your pain. Therefore, the goal of the treatment is not the reduction of pain, but the elimination of suffering. Let us be clear that we are not promising to eliminate your pain. That may be impossible. But we can offer to help you change your perspective on pain to such a degree that the effects of pain on your life will change substantially and for the better. Those of you that are in attitude of gratitude with chronic pain, I think you can agree that that is probably the AOG in a nutshell, for sure. I love acceptance commitment therapy when it comes to living. Can you guys hear those? We hear this bird's nest up. My deck is up there, and every time I come out here, I like to think of it as bird song, but it's not. They're really yelling at me, I know. Hi, birdies. I wish I could see them. I can only hear them. I can't see them. But anyway, I love acceptance and commitment therapy. Thank you, Dr. Bruce Singer, for introducing it to me back all those 9 years ago. But this book is, if you're looking for a workbook especially, but it's way more than a workbook. I mean, there's lines for you to write things down, but it really is, very therapy-based, and it will teach you things that you can apply to living your own life. So check it out. I love it. Definitely an eye-opener for me that I hope you can enjoy too. Okay, I kind of gave away a little spoiler with that last one as to what my next selection was going to be. It is by my mentor and the man who really helped me find a way to a good and joyful and grateful life while living with chronic pain and illness, and that is Dr. Bruce Singer. He has a Facebook group called Black Duck Moments for Recovery, and his book, my book selection, is Black Duck Moments Every Day. Now, like my previous selection, Living With It Daily Meditations for People with Chronic Pain, this is a daily affirmations book, specifically for people with chronic pain and illness. And it is wonderful. Each day, all 365 days in this beautiful book, focuses on a different topic, living with chronic pain and illness. You know, we were just talking about acceptance commitment therapy, and Dr. Singer was the one who really helped me understand the need for acceptance and embracing that in order to move forward with chronic pain. So each of these readings focuses on things that pertain exactly to us: finding motivation, finding clarity, connection, which I'm always saying the secret sauce to a life of joy and purpose while living with chronic pain and illness, is not only gratitude but connection. Suffering, which we talked about with John Kabat-Zinn's book. On April 2nd, he has a chapter on acceptance, and one of his paragraphs says, "If we seek pain, we will find pain. If we cast out our fishing line in the hope of catching suffering, we will land the largest suffering fish ever caught. If we take the path of avoidance, we will walk smack dab into the thing we seek to avoid. Acceptance is the only pain strategy that works." Can't say it any better than that. Each of these, so he's got a quote at the top of the page. Each one is a different topic. There's a quote pertaining to that topic, a daily reading of something wonderful that he shares. He's got such a way with words. And then an affirmation down at the bottom. April 5th is, my favorite topic, other than maybe acceptance and connection, which is gratefulness. And let me read this, April 5th. So the quote is, "Gratitude is a vaccine, an antitoxin, and an antiseptic," by John Henry Jowett. And he writes, Dr. Singer writes, "Gaining perspective on living with a chronic condition can be helpful, especially during those chilly days when one's bones ache and every little movement feels like a cut from a sharp knife. How much time do you spend over the course of a day not just taking pain medications, but thinking about when you can take them next, how many you have left, how you will get to your doctor to write the next prescription, and what happens if you run out too early? Add those minutes up day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year. The time lost to pills may surprise you." To keep the idea of perspective going for a moment, how much time each day do you spend on gratefulness? Is it a medication you take first thing in the morning and then regularly throughout your day? Do you take the last dose at night? Which sums work out higher, the time you spend taking pills or the time you spend cultivating gratitude? Medication has its place in pain management, but gratitude may be the closest thing we have to a wonder drug. Its only side effects are joy and happiness. In this sense, John Henry Jowett was right. Gratitude is a vaccine to ward off suffering, an antitoxin for toxic thoughts, and an antiseptic for the wounds we carry around from the traumas we experienced. Amazing. Every reading is like this. This came out just a few years ago, and it's a wonderful book. Black Duck Moments Every Day, Daily Affirmations for Chronic Pain and Illness, available on Amazon, and I highly recommend it. Okay, my next selection is a book that is relatively new. It only came out last summer. I came across it just a couple of months ago, but it's a good one, and I hope that you check it out too. It is called Outsmart Your Pain: Mindfulness and Self-Compassion to Help You Leave Chronic Pain Behind, by Christiane Wolf, MD, PhD. Now, let me tell you this, I don't love the title. I don't like titles like Outsmart Your Pain. Outsmart Your Pain doesn't bother me so much. It's the help you leave chronic pain behind part that I don't love. There's a lot of books. I own some of them. There's a lot of books like Freedom, Rid Yourself of Pain, Freedom from Pain. there's a lot of books like that that kind of put the ownership, I feel, it puts the ownership on us that we're doing something wrong if we can't rid ourselves of pain. So while the title, I think, is just perhaps like leaving chronic pain behind, that's not really what the book is about. Otherwise, I wouldn't be recommending it. She is giving lovely mindfulness-based tips on how to deal with, what was that, roars? Just some kind of noise, and no, I don't know what's going on. Wonderful mindfulness-based tips, all sorts of wonderful, this beautiful hardcover book has all sorts of wonderful chapters that are mindfulness based. They have meditations at the end of them, and the topics are just wonderful, such as you are not your pain, so using self-compassion for your pain, grief, depression, anger, all sorts of things that we deal with on a regular basis. I love her chapter on self-compassion because we need to exercise self-compassion. In fact, that's why I kind of don't love the title, because I don't feel like saying, you know, we're going to rid ourselves of chronic pain. I don't feel that's very self-compassionate. But if you use the techniques that she so beautifully shares in this book, it is self-compassion. So she says in here, one of the hardest parts of living with chronic pain is the loneliness that comes from the repeated sense that other people don't understand what we're going through. Acknowledging to ourselves with caring and by witnessing how hard this is and how alone we feel starts to calm the anxious and contracted nervous system. We begin to give ourselves what we wish from others: kindness, compassion, and presence. Self-compassion has two main parts: kind awareness of the pain and the knowledge that suffering and pain are a part of life. And then she talks about self-compassion is not self-pity. So she's got these wonderful chapters, each with topics that I absolutely love and adore. I really love this book. I reached out to her a couple months ago. I'm hoping to get her on my broadcast soon. We keep playing email tag, but at the end of each of these topics, she has a wonderful meditation, a written meditation. I think you will love this book. Tara Brock, who is somebody I share her meditations all the time, she writes about this book. It's a brilliant guide for transforming our relationship with pain. Step by step, we learn to meet difficult experience with mindfulness, curiosity, and kindness. Tara is the author of Radical Acceptance. So Outsmart Your Pain by Christiane Wolf. The book is a beautiful gem that, despite that last part of the title, which I don't love, the topics are something that I know that you can really benefit from, because I sure have. And you can jump around during these topics too. It's the type of book that, you know, you can, if you're having trouble coming to acceptance on a particular day or dealing with a lot of anger, you can find the chapter in here, skip to it. They're nice, short, couple pages, which is easy for people like us living with chronic pain. I find it much easier to read things in short segments. So it's something you can skip around for, and I know you will love it too. My next book recommendation for those living with chronic pain and illness is a former guest on my show, Joy Selleck. Actually, it's co-authored by Joy Selleck and Dr. Stephen Overman, and I have had them both on my show at different times. The book is called You Don't Look Sick: Living Well with Invisible Chronic Illness. That's a title I can get behind, because that's exactly what this beautiful book is about. It is about living well with chronic pain and illness. This book is so wonderful and unique because it is written from the patient's perspective. Joy Selleck is the patient, and Dr. Stephen Overman is her doctor. So it's written about living with invisible chronic illness and living well with invisible chronic illness through the patient's perspective and the physician's perspective. So interesting. I highly recommend, if you haven't caught their interviews on my show, I'll put them in the show notes if I think of it. They're wonderful. Hear Joy's perspective and Dr. Overman's perspective. So Joy comes at chronic illness by way of things like gratitude and living peacefully with it. And, you know, she definitely has like patient advocacy tips in here and tips for self-care and things like that. But they're very, I don't want to say common sense. That's not right. They're written from a very compassionate perspective. So in this chapter here, it's called Joy's Top 10 List for Living Well Even When Sick, even while sick. And it says, take care of yourself first. Never, never, never give up. Learn to be honest about how you are feeling. Enroll in the school of whatever works. Make friends with fatigue. Live like a child. Step out of the box. Search for silver linings. Find a way to share your gifts and be still. I particularly love the part where she talks about sharing her gifts, because that's something that I talk about quite a bit in my work and in the group too, is getting out of our own suffering and helping somebody else can really help us, you know, move forward with joy and purpose. So she said, finding a way to share your gifts for the first months or even years after finding a name for my illness, every available brain cell and every ounce of energy I had was needed to determine what to do about it. There's those birds again. However, the time came when my illness had stabilized somewhat, and I understood it was not going to... Shh! Shush! I think it's making it worse. I understood it was not going to go away or kill me, at least not anytime soon. I realized I needed to find a way to focus on more than just me, my illness, and how I was feeling each day. I had become too self-absorbed and too preoccupied with illness. The only solution was to find something to do that wasn't about me, to share my gifts such as they were now. And she talks about going on to, volunteer, or, whatever we are physically capable of doing, even if it's lending a listening ear to a friend. Anything that gets us outside of our pain is helpful. And then, talking from the doctor's perspective, Dr. Overman has this segment in the book that talks about, don't confuse making peace with your illness with giving up. That wasn't what he said. Let me quote what he said. It said, don't confuse making peace with giving up. Never give up. And then he says, many of my patients have done everything that was asked of them and responded to all the should-do statements that have filled their minds, but it has come at the cost of reducing their own personal quiet time. They feel imprisoned by their illness and are self-critical for not being able to get better. And that's what I am saying when I said I didn't love the last part of that title. We do feel responsible if we're not able to kind of outsmart, conquer, break free from our pain, things like that. So we can be proactive, I believe, in doing things to live well with chronic pain and illness, and not giving up hope. I do things on a daily basis that I know make my life easier with chronic pain and illness, but I don't break free from it. I mean, I would love to, of course, who wouldn't, but I don't ever promise that with any of the work that I do, that anybody's going to be solved with gratitude, or cured with gratitude and all of that, but it will make your life better. So this book, You Don't Look Sick, Living Well with Invisible Chronic Illness, Joy Selleck and Steve Overman. Okay, gang, here with my next selections, and that is an S at the end of that because I'm going to cheat on this next one. My selection is actually going to be selections. It's written by the same author, and I couldn't choose one over the other, but they really kind of go together. Vidyamala Birch is a mindfulness teacher from the UK. She lives with a disability herself, and she is the founder of an organization called Breathworks. And I first came across this book, which is called Living Well with Pain and Illness, The Mindful Way to Free Yourself from Suffering. It's been out for several years. This came out in 2010. So it's been out for a while, but she uses a lot of the same teachings of Jon Kabat-Zinn, author of Full Catastrophe Living and the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program. She uses it and applies it directly to living with chronic pain and illness. So while MBSR, or Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction, is for all stress and pain, Vidyamala takes it a step further and really gears it specifically to pain and illness. She's wheelchair bound after a spinal injury herself. If you're in AOG on Facebook in my group, you will know that I often share. She has Tuesday live free meditations. She's been on my show. She was on my show last spring, I think January of 2021. She's wonderful, and she tailors her meditations directly to people living with some kind of chronic physical condition. And she really kind of tweaks them too, based on what people's physical abilities are. So not everybody can sit in a chair. Not everybody can lie flat on the ground. So she really tailors them. So this book, which came out first, really talks about basically what the title shares is how to live well with pain and illness, but applying it with a mindfulness perspective. This part of the book, she talks about the distinction between healing and cure, which is, again, why I don't like to say things like rid yourself of chronic pain and all that, because I just don't feel, for most of us, I don't know that that's a realistic thing. I would never claim to cure or rid anyone of anything. She says it's important not to confuse this deep healing with simple ideas of cure. I can't mend my spine with the power of my mind or restore the paralyzed nerves, but I can change my relationship with my condition and find peace in my body, which is what I'm always saying. Not in those exact words, but you know what I mean. She says, those who learn mindfulness while living with terminal illness confront the distinction between healing and cure most starkly of all. We'll all face death one day, so death is a part of everyone's life. But even if you are dying, you can still heal yourself by changing your relationship with your experience. In this sense, healing doesn't mean the absence of symptoms, disease, or disability, and you only discover what it really means by embarking on your own very personal healing journey. That journey, which often includes coming to terms with your situation and letting go of an unrealistic search for a cure, is often long and complex. It takes time to see the need to heal your attitude to your difficulties. Couldn't say it better myself. So I'm going to lead from this, which is still available on Amazon. I'll have the link in the show notes, to this one called You Are Not Your Pain. It's an 8-week program. So she's founded Breathworks, and she's actually developed her own 8-week program, mindfulness-based stress reduction. To that 8-week program, she's applied it directly to living well with chronic pain and illness. And that is what this book is. And if you go on her I think it's breathworks.org, might be breathworks.uk. But if you go on her website, you can, or Google her, you can find out more. She also offers various classes, so both of these books are tremendously helpful in helping you be proactive in the healing aspects, not the curing aspect. So Vidyamala Birch of Breathworks, great books, highly recommend. Okay, this next selection, I am actually cheating again because it's going to be 2 books, and I was going to make them an honorable mention because I don't have a whole lot to say about them, but they are important. I find they're important. They've been important for my own healing. And unlike the other books that I'm touching on in this video, this does get a little bit medically specific, I suppose. They're both about the stress-disease connection, and what trauma and stress can do for our pain. So the first one I read is called When the Body Says No, Exploring the Stress-Disease Connection. Woo, it's like I'm gonna blow away like Dorothy out here. It's mid-June. I don't know why it's chilly today. It was like close to 100 degrees yesterday, and today's freezing. But anyway, by Gabor Mate, MD, who is an addiction expert, but this book has nothing to do with addiction, but talks about the stress-disease connection. It's a really important book. He's got all sorts of YouTube talks and things like that about the stress disease connection. This one is a little bit more, I think, well known. This one's called The Body Keeps the Score: Brain, Mind, and Body and the Healing of Trauma. And they're both amazing books if you want to explore what stress does, or what perhaps if you have past trauma in your life, what that does. I've had some guests on my show that talk about the stress disease connection. We did a screening of the film This Might Hurt in my group last spring, I believe. And Dr. Howard Schubiner was a guest on my show who was featured in that film. He runs a clinic out in, I think, somewhere in the Midwest on helping people deal with past trauma to deal with their pain. Now, while this isn't normally a message that I talk about, I do believe in the mind-body connection, which is why a lot of the books that I'm recommending here, in fact, I would say the majority of them, are helping us to, use mindfulness and techniques in order to live well with our pain versus ridding ourselves of the pain itself. So both of these books, The Body Keeps the Score and When the Body Says No, it would be hard for me to choose a favorite. This one, The Body Keeps the Score, I want to say it's number one on the bestseller list and has been for years, or if not very close. It is always way up there. Bessel van der Kolk, MD, wrote this. I took a course of his online last year. And again, Gabor Mate from this one. So I didn't want to do this video without mentioning these, because I do feel like they're, even if you read just one of them, it could be very eye-opening for you and could possibly help you to approach your illness differently, and maybe even deal with some of those mindfulness-based approaches that some of the other books, here we go again, gonna blow away. Okay, and we are down to our last selection, and I'm once again going to cheat because these are by the same author, and I can't choose which one. Toni Bernhard, I will sing her praises forever. She has been quite a teacher for me and a mentor through her writing, and I've met her since becoming a fangirl of her writing. She writes a column for Psychology Today called Turning Straw into Gold, about living with chronic illness. She has a Buddhist-based approach into living with chronic illness. And I came across her books. First one, How to Be Sick and How to Live Well with Chronic Pain and Illness. I believe this one came out first, and then How to Be Sick. And How to Be Sick actually has a pocket edition out as well. She's been on my broadcast many times. Toni's got to be at the top of my list for her work. Her Buddhist-based approach, and when I say Buddhist-based, I'm not talking the religion of Buddhism. It's a philosophy, and mindfulness is a big part of it. But she's got such a common sense approach to living well. It's exactly what the book says: how to live well with chronic pain and illness. The back of the book says, chronic pain and illness create many challenges, from career crises and relationship issues to struggles with self-blame and isolation. Beloved author Toni Bernhard addresses these challenges and many more, using practical examples to illustrate how mindfulness, equanimity, and compassion can help readers make peace with a life turned upside down. And she and I got sick at the same time. I've now had the pleasure of interviewing her several times. She's been sick for 21 years. And just like the rest of us that, get a life-changing diagnosis or an injury of some kind, all of a sudden life changes. And Toni, through her writing, through these books in particular, and through her Psychology Today article, she tackles these issues of what happens when all of a sudden life as we know it turns upside down. How can I live a life of joy and purpose and still find meaning in my life? And that is what both of these books does. The first time I read one of her books, I hadn't read anything like it. I say this all the time. I hadn't read anybody else talking about the emotional aspect of living with pain and illness. It was all of those things like trying to cure yourself and all of that. But what about embracing our pain, not liking it, but embracing it and taking it in as part of ourselves without meaning giving up, but with saying, okay, and having self-compassion and using the breath and mindfulness-based approaches to, love ourselves despite having these conditions. So that is my final choice, which is actually 2 books, but that's okay. I can't recommend one over the other. They're both wonderful. And if you're looking for a pocket companion, the How to Be Sick Pocket Companion is wonderful. So these books, I'm gonna have Tony round it out here. These books are a big part of how I share my message today. For the most part, most of them have had a profound effect on my life. So I hope you can find something in one of them, or maybe many. Not all of them are still in print. I think one of them is actually officially out of print, but the rest of them you can at least find used copies of. Even that one that's out of print, you can still find used copies of. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I took it from different places, outside, inside, and all that to kind of mix it up. But I hope you enjoyed this. Those are my favorite books on living with chronic pain and illness. So I will soon come to you with my favorite books on gratitude and my favorite books on personal growth. So I hope you enjoyed this, gang. Peace and love, and get your gratitude on and get reading.